we may have a difference theologically, and coming out of some of the teachings of Matthew and some of the other, is this notion of the Melchizedek priesthood and the distinction between covenant Torah, which you can follow, and Levitical Torah, which you can't follow. And so, it's not an admonition. I just want to see where we're at in the walk.
I still need to be taught your point of view completely, because I'm not aware of the issues between those two terms.
It's book of the law versus book of the covenant segregation. Before the golden calf instruction and after golden calf sin.
Yeah, well, you can, well, one thing I know is that we don't need to have sacrifices anymore, because Yeshua was the final one.
Right.
Which is in covenant law.
The temple is not going to be built yet. They're going to have a peace agreement saying that they can build it, but it's not going to be built till maybe 3.5 years later.
And we will not have enough time this week or next to go through all the differences. But the fact that you're open, it doesn't in any way contradict or change the excellent scientific work that you've done. And what I found, for me at least, is that this understanding of covenant Torah versus Levitical Torah and the Melchizedek priesthood, our high priest Yahusha, Kohen Hagadol, allows us to understand even better. Suddenly, at least for me, the scriptures made a lot more sense, and I got over the conflicts of how can I not be keeping some of the 613 laws. So you probably remember Matthew Nolan, who was on From Torah to the Tribes, and his admiration and respect for you. But he's got a number of teachings with that, dealing with that particular.
Well, can I ask you one of the main crusts of this?
Sure.
Do we follow his feast days or not?
We follow the 3 feast days called out in covenant Torah, which are those 3 feast days. The original ones are not called out in covenant Torah, but they are rehearsals, and they were added afterwards.
Okay, is that pertaining to the Passover and unleavened bread and
Shavuot?
Sukkot?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Otherwise,
Otherwise, we'd be done talking.
Yeah, right now there's no
Right.
conflict. There's no conflict with your presentation to covenant law instructions for.
Right, because I'm not
festival.
following along, because the terms, I don't know the difference between them,
Right.
So I can't.
One of the
give
main,
a yes or no.
the main difference, if I could point out the main difference, Gil, is that under the law versus the covenant, under the law, in order to enter into the priesthood, you had to be from the house of Aaron. And so now where there's a new priest that came from the tribe of Judah, we are all able to enter into the priesthood under our high priest, Melchizedek Yahusha.
Correct,
So-
correct.
So we can
I
all
would
enter.
agree. I would definitely agree on it, because now keep in mind, it specifically says the bride is from 12 of the tribe. There's 13 names. 12, I think Dan is not mentioned. Okay, for the 144,000.
Right.
Now that seed is spread probably all over the world, but there specifically can only, in other words, you won't see Esau in there. All right.
Right.
Now
Right.
Esau, if they switch over believing in the Father and the Son, they can be a bridemaid.
Yep.
Yeah.
No problem. You see?
Yep.
And Dan can be in the bridemaid Messiah as well, but Dan cannot be one of the brides, because I think it's exactly correct the way he's saying it, if you understand DNA and the way things are spread and what he's trying to say. The 12 tribes are going to be the ones that are persecuted the most. The 12 tribes are going to be the ones that's following the most, but therefore they have a part in it, of being at the, remember, Elohim does not mean G-O-D. That word G-O-D did not exist yet. And it means mighty one. Let's see if I can find that. And it means, authority figure, basically. Let me see if I saved it.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty much on the same page with that. That Elohim means, mighty one. But God is a generic for Elohim. But there's El Elyon, Most High Authority One, which of course is Yahuwah. But under this book of the covenant, which we were all aliens from the household of Israel. Now, whoever comes in, whoever that may be, under Melchizedek as our high priest, he called all the mixed multitude Israel. So there's no, tribal or blood line or, flesh and blood or male or female or any of that stuff.
Probably the key thing is with the distinction, and it all of a sudden the book of Hebrews becomes a lot more understandable and puts a context to all of Scripture. But with Yahusha's sacrifice, the book of the law was done away with. He had atoned to that and brought us back into the original covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, and with that reestablished the Melchizedek priesthood, and the Levitical priesthood was no longer needed. So we didn't need two priesthoods. We didn't need two Torahs. We went back to the original covenant.
Well, it's a new covenant that looks just like the original covenant, but a better covenant because it was ratified by the blood of Messiah instead of the blood of sheep and goats.
Right. Thank you, Carl.
All right. I'm on the same page with that, but I just wanted to, I want to sound the note that these are not vain religious acts that don't have any meaning to it. These rehearsal patterns, if you follow them, is going to get you in the right place at the right time. Absolutely. And he says to look at the sky for a sign. We used to not know what the sign was. Yep. Now we know.
This object?
Yes. And it's going to, the world is going to rock and roll. Remember, this is the worst time in all of Earth's history. And keep in mind, the astronomers, the government or the world astronomers are going to say that half of the Earth where Jerusalem is and the Middle East area and that side, that half of the globe is where the meteor shower is going to hit. Then they're going to say this side, North and South America, is the safe side. So you're going to have planes coming over from Europe and everything, landing over here to go to the underground facilities. The Muslims are going to be locked into their own country because of the terrorist activities in CO4. No one will grant them a visa. So they're stuck within the boundaries of their own country.
Well, they're already spread throughout Europe.
Right, but they may get kicked out, don't know, but they're going to be sent back possibly. I know if I was, put it this way, if I was a leader of a country and they're causing this much trouble, I would do like, what is it, Switzerland, I think it is. When the economy, whenever there's shortage of jobs, they tell all foreigners that have jobs, you got to leave.
Yep, Poland and Hungary, I think, are
That's
doing
right.
Yeah, Poland is doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense. Your country is supposed to be in benefit of you. You can come visit, but you can't take our jobs. Our jobs are our own, so that's what they should do. There's nothing wrong with that.
You're using logic, that's what you should do.
That's exactly right. But now it's not politically right to think logically.
These are agents of chaos making our laws these days.
Correct. So getting a clear understanding, each one of these stories in the book is giving you data points to understand the last book of the Bible. These stories are not random. Without a deep study into these books, looking at this object, it defines what you can expect on the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation.
Yeah. Well, once again, Gill, I want to thank you for your time, and thank you, Libby, for bringing all this together. And it really does. I don't think Yah's done teaching us yet. At least I know, not for me. I have so much to learn, and I really appreciate when people who and Gil, I'm not trying to put you up on a pedestal or anything like that, but I'm going to imply that your level, to me, it would be like a scholarly level. So I really appreciate it when scholarly people spend time with someone who never made it through the 9th grade. I appreciate you taking the time to help me understand some things.
Well, you helped me understand something tonight, so we're all on a scholarly level. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this group right here. Because if you parted the bride and the bridemaid, you're instructing the nation, so you must be a scholar. If we make it, you know, we're hoping that we're in the right group right here. But yeah, so
We're all
look at a
jointly fitted
certificate.
together.
Yeah, don't look for a certificate to claim that you're a scholar or not. No, it's your level of knowledge, and if you're coming into the bride or the bridemaid, you're it. You're there. You achieved.
Your faithfulness, your trust, your
You're
action is based on trust.
You're basing that God or I use that word again, I'm trying to break that habit, that the Almighty and the Messiah do not give us vain religious things to follow vainly. No, they give us practical learning, you know?
Yeah, that
Just like your
confirms
law,
that
though.
verse it confirms that verse that says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So we have both substance and evidence here.
Does
Right.
does anyone else have a question? It was kind of hard to see if there was anybody trying to raise their hand when Gil was showing his screen. So is there any other questions y'all had?
Well, when can we talk with you again?
Anytime, because
I think Christy, I'm sorry, I think Christy also has a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gil.
well, but I just want to say that anytime that y'all can reach out to me, because this is critical for you to pass on to others. Because when the internet goes down, it's only the voice or individual knowledge that you can help your neighbor and other people what they have to do.
Yeah. Now
That's us being priests in our community, instructors,
Yeah.
protectors.
And as we walk out these feast days and these feast times, we're going to be on the right schedule.
That's correct. It won't matter the calendar you choose, because we may or may not be right at it, but he defined it for us. The 40-day warning is the night of his return after a 12-hour delay in Earth's rotation. And then 3.5 days earlier is Passover. And there's something that Yeshua said I wanted to pass on to y'all. Remember how I said that people in Europe would be flying over here to go to the underground facility, and we're doing the opposite. We're going over there. Now, picture these two planes. Now, that's except for a certain place in Canada, all right? You know, but so when the two planes cross over the Atlantic, there are some words that Yeshua said that are quite interesting. Picture this. The two planes are crossing, and these words he said: those who try to save their life will lose it, and those who try to lose their life will save it.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
Yes. Now,
Yeah, good enough.
Christy,
Good
did
enough.
you have a question? Yeah, Christy, I see your hand.
Yes, I do.
How cute.
Um,
I didn't know we could do that. She has
What
her
is that? You
hand
keep
up
saying
there.
you see that. I don't see where it is. I don't see where you're noticing it.
Oh, so cute. Anyway, she found it. She has her hand raised.
Go ahead.
It's all yours, Christy.
so this question is in regard to, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you.
This question is in regard to the timing of all of this. Is when this happens, is it going to be a Jubilee year?
No. we have confirmation that the Jubilee was ended on March 17th. But we have completed 70 Jubilees since they entered the land. And the way to qualify a Jubilee, again, on top of this, besides using astronomy, not astrology, astronomy, off of those, off of the artifacts that we have here, let me show you again, gives us certain days like this right here. Most of these artifacts gives you within a half hour of the event. Doesn't just give you the year, doesn't just give you the month, just doesn't give you the day, but it gives you within a half hour of the event. Because you see, either if you go, you see how you have about a half of a constellation and maybe like a little bit over a half here? As Earth is rotating a half hour, you're going to lose this right here, which is shown in the disk over here. You would lose part of what the disk is showing you.
And he's talking about seeing the constellations go over the horizon in the west and coming up over the horizon in the east.
Correct.
Is the reference for seeing these constellations.
And what this ends up giving us in the short version, I can't, let's see here. It ends up pointing to us, remember the story of Jacob. It's a mirror image in what we're seeing right now, because remember, this is Jacob's trouble. Jacob's trouble started in 2001. Esau declared war against Jacob. That was on a Sabbath year. Remember, the blessings are given to the children on a Sabbath year, towards the end of a Sabbath year. So Esau couldn't kill him until the Sabbath was over with. So Jacob had to leave before the Sabbath is finished. And he went to his future father-in-law's place, it ends up being. Then he strikes a deal that he'll work for him for 7 years for Rachel, but he was tricked. He got a bride he knew nothing about. Well, we had a world leader we knew nothing about, which happens to be related to Esau. Okay? That was 2016, I believe. No.
2008.
2008. So we had to work another 7 years before he gets the true bride that he wanted. Now we got a leader that wants to drain the swamp. You're already seen his help in eliminating the corruption in Saudi Arabia. There's corruption right now that's being knocked out in Iraq, and so on and so on.
Israel too.
Right. So
here too.
So that's another 7 years. So that's 2001 as a Sabbath. You count 7 years after that, another 7. So that's 14 years after 2000. That gives you 2015. Yeah, 16. The next year is the Jubilee. How do we know that? Because Jacob worked for free the following year. You do not take payment on a Jubilee. Jacob worked for free for the following for that year. Then after that is the gathering of the spotted sheep and spotted goats. That's us.
The separating.
Okay. Now, how long is that period of time that he's gathering the sheep? Well, it doesn't say, but it does qualify a little bit further. When he goes to leave, his father-in-law chased after him and said for him to come back to him. He says, no, because I worked for you for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Now, it's just before Jacob reaches the River Jordan, where he splits his family or his family unit, his tribal unit, into 2 groups. He puts his remnant or his favorites in a place of hiding, and the other group goes on to either make peace with Esau or war. That's the Great Tribulation. They're going to go through the Great Tribulation. Now, that's 20 years from 2001. Now, can I predict the future? No. I can only point to astronomy Do we have the foot? Do we have a moon at the foot of Virgo? Yes, in 2021, and that happens to be 20 years from 2001 when Esau created war with Jacob. This is Jacob's trouble. Now Jacob's trouble continues, which is another 3.5 years, which is the Great Tribulation. But the group that goes into hiding happens right here. Now, will that be the year? I cannot say 100%. No, I have no way of predicting the future. We're watchmen on the wall, not prophets on the wall. We look in the heavens for a sign. But before this happens, we should seal 3, seal 4, and seal 5. Seal 5 is a peace agreement where the souls on the altar are complaining to the Father. And that used to bother me. Like,
when
why
will
does
we
the
be
Father have to
avenged?
complain in here? They are complaining because they're witnessing a peace agreement on earth being signed, and they have not been revenged. He says, go back
I'm
to
sorry,
sleep,
can you
not
tell
your
me-
time.
What does CO mean?
The
Seal.
seal. The seal.
SEAL.
Seal. Okay, I thought you said. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like CO.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got to go to the North Pole
Got
and
it.
get you a seal out there, and we'll sacrifice seals. Yeah.
You got to get you a chief officer.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry for the
go ahead,
accent.
Carl, go ahead.
I just had a question. This date of 2021, or another 7 years, or 20 years from 2001. What are you saying is going to happen at that point? Is that when Messiah is going to come back for all of us? Is that when this object is coming? Is that when he comes to bring the woman
Bring us into the wilderness, a remnant. That is the beginning of the Great
Okay.
Tribulation.
Okay.
And remember, if you read Revelation towards that end right there, there's 2 events happening on opposite sides of the earth. It's the same day, same 24 hours, if you want to call it, but 2 separate things. One, in the middle of the night, the remnant is being brought to the place of safety. On the opposite side of earth,
Destruction.
they're being plummeted by meteors.
Yeah. You know, I don't know about y'all, but I look so forward to that. Some people point a finger at me and, you know, say that's crazy and that it's, yeah, I mean, I'm actually excited to use the stuff that's in my backpack, you know, to get it on out there, you know, to be moving around and see some fresh scenery and not know where I'm going, just trust him to get me there. I'm totally looking forward to that.
You and a million other people.
Yeah.
Remember, the scripture even tells us, do not be glad of
The day of
this
the Lord.
meteor shower event,
Yeah.
but wish that you're chosen, you know, because remember, even when we're in this, everybody on earth, and that includes us, is going to be scared. Because this is the most severe event in all of Earth's history.
The hearts of men will fail for fear.
Right. And we don't want to be underground. We want to be above ground. This is the way you survive this. Underground is a wrong place to be.
Oh, yeah.
So he gives us these instructions perfectly. If we follow them, they're not vain religious acts. They're factual, hard information that you can't get anyplace else.
So if you think you might be off a bit, take a really slow plane.
There you go. You're going to run out of gas, though. But keep in mind, remember, he says for us to be watchmen on the wall. He didn't say to be prophets on a. What are we watching for? And then he also gives us a practice run to be in Jerusalem. Guess what? We will see this in Sukkot. If we're obedient, we will be there for Sukkot in the proper timing. And we should, if we get a blessing somewhere between here, whether it's dinar, whatever it may, 2019 is going to be a very good practice run for us to do prior to this. You know, because we should have enough money to help whoever wishes to practice this and teach them the reality of what he's telling us.
Well, that was one thing, Gil, I didn't realize that you had mentioned, that something about you need to make at least one trip over to Israel for a feast day, so you can kind of be
in their immigration system already.
yeah. Is that right? I mean,
I don't know about
That
that
is
part.
correct.
I don't know about
Because,
that.
well, you have to
And the
know the
reason that
way. You have to know the way a rabbi thinks.
right, but I'm not of this world anyway. But one thing I do know is that the dates that I'm looking at aren't on a mathematical Hillel calendar and could be, as much as, 3 weeks different. So I'm not going to probably be going at the same time that
He's
they're
just
going.
talking
But
about just pure immigration into the country, though. New people under stressful situations going on Earth, they may be more restrictive on who they let in, not because of a feast day. Just general immigration might be more restrictive because there's crazy stuff going on the Earth.
Well, Israel's population is going to double because there's only about 5 million people in Israel. And you're looking at, from the math side, you're looking at close to 5 million people going between the bride and the bridemaid. They have to draw a line. Now, what's going to be the parameters of them drawing a line? Probably going to be one who is following the feast. And you're going to be documented when you came in and for what reasons. Because they asked me that. What brings you to Mr. Jerusalem? I'm here to follow the feast. It's typed in there. Okay? So if they have this big mass, they say, and they show up for the first time saying, oh, I'm here to follow the feast. They look at, well, you've never been here before. You're just
where
panicking.
you been?
Yeah, you're just panicking. Go on back home. They could easily say that if they wish.
Yeah, but
That's why he said for us to do practice runs. The scripture tells us to do practice runs.
Jasmine, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. Thank you. In Israel, I mean, anything can happen between now and then, but you're only allowed to be there for 3 months. So if you're going at Sukkot, how on earth are you going to stay there till Passover?
You can stay there years.
No, you cannot. I've been there. I was there for 3 months. They kick you out at 3 months. Unless you have somebody who can finagle something, you're out of there in 3 months.
That's what I understood. I thought there's a 3. That's my understanding too, is that you have a 3-month vacation visa.
I was there for 3 months. I know.
I understand. The visa is stamped for 3 months at a time, but you can go request another stamp.
They don't give it so easy, Gail. Really don't. Unless you have somebody that's going to sponsor you, you're out of there.
But
so just something to consider.
But
No. Now, if you're going and take jobs, yeah, you're out of there.
No, not jobs. I went there as a volunteer. It didn't matter why you're there. You cannot stay any more than 3 months unless you have somebody who's going to sponsor you for longer, and it's special circumstances.
well, you can all get a job on a cruise ship.
wouldn't it just be, let me
I'm
ask you this.
planning to get some cruise ships, which are offshore.
We might need some workers.
And we do have connections. I have I've met with the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. His name is Yom Essinger. A friend of mine is he's a Jewish friend. He's personal friends with Bibi. He was friends with Bibi before he was even prime minister, and Bibi slept at his house multiple times. We have the ear of the president even, if we need it. But there will be ships also, and at the amount of, remember, this is going to be one of the critical issues that's going to help us out here. The economy of Europe is going to collapse roughly around it. The euro is going to collapse. Israel is the breadbasket of Europe. Now, if their currency can't buy, if it's not stable, and trade is breaking down, because there will be a barrier with trade and currency. Here we come with a bounty of money, just like we left Egypt. You know, they had wagons of gold and silver. We're going to have something, whether with dinar, dollars, whatever. It's going to be a bountiful amount. And we're buying the food that normally would go to Europe that Europe can't buy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were they going to turn us down and watch their economy fall? Or are they going to welcome us with open arms and say, spend as much as you want?
That's a good point, Gil, because it's going, what happened with the Exodus with Moses leading them out is going, that was a type and shadow of what's going to happen in these last days as well.
These stories are not random in the Bible. They're data points explaining the last book of the Bible. If you understand the book, the old books well enough, it will define the last book. And they're
Declaring
not,
the end from the
then
beginning.
only an Almighty can orchestrate this.
And the 40-day warning too, you know, like, you know, Jasmine was talking about the 3 months. If we delayed and waited closer to the 40-day warning, we would still have time to fly during that 40-day period to get there. It wouldn't be like we would be all leaving at the same time. We could hang out there in Jerusalem, right?
Yes. You can just fly out the country for a day and you come back and you get stamped again. As long, just go for 2 to 3 days. I know some Israeli, U.S. Jewish people trying to get their citizenship, that they leave for two or 3 days before, and they just come on in it. But they even have a job there, and they still have to do that.
Yeah.
Because
We can go take a vacation to see Petra and come back in Jordan.
Right. But
Jasmine has another question too, Gil.
sure.
Thank you. Okay, something I'm wrestling with what you're saying as far as going to Jerusalem. And the reason I'm wrestling with it is because of what it says in John 4:21, where Yahusha says to the woman, he says, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. What do you do with that?
And then there's also a reference to those that are in Jerusalem to flee during that period of time.
The fleeing part is at the end of the Great Tribulation, the last 40 days, because remember, the peace agreement is somewhere around a little bit before the 40-day warning. The peace agreement is signed before the 40 days, okay? So you're looking at the war where 3/4 of Israel is conquered and another remnant is pushed to the desert. That's the last 40 days of the Great Tribulation. The 2 prophets die. The Muslims stop fighting. They celebrate the death of the 2 prophets. That saves that remnant that's in the Negev desert. They fall to their knees and they pray to the Father to send the Messiah.
Well, it says that 2/3 of the people will be killed in Israel. The rest,
Right.
the rest
That's
of them,
during the Great Tribulation.
they're not nursing babies.
That's during the Great Tribulation. That's 3/4 of the northern part of Israel is gone. Jerusalem falls to the Antichrist. It says that's where, remember, it names the different places where the seat of Satan is. It says basically it's going to be the United States first, then Europe, then Iraq, and then Jerusalem. It names them in that order. That's the areas that he conquers in that exact order.
Isn't Judah also supposed to reach out to Ephraim?
When there's
I think
a section of that will happen, yes.
yeah,
Whenever we're over there.
So in the Joseph narrative, I saw that it was, Judah came to Ephraim, not Ephraim coming to Judah, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The
Too.
rabbis have reached out to me and had meetings with me. Since when does that happen? Okay, I'm just a little Cajun boy. What are the rabbis reaching out to me for?
You're scaring them. You're scaring them, Gil.
You're making sense.
Yeah.
You're making sense.
Well,
know.
they found it, and even the Talmud. Remember, the Talmud is a thing you got to handle. I don't recommend it for anybody if you're not grounded correctly. But there's about 10 books that's listed in our scriptures that we no longer have.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that's just before they went into captivity. Now, anytime, just like if there's any Catholics here, sorry, I used to be one, so I can say these things. If you want to make a book believable, you blend it with truth with false. Make it half and half. That's called wickedness. When you take two threads, one truth and intertwine it, that's called wickedness. That's how they make a wick of a candle. That's where the root of the word comes. The Talmud is wicked, but it doesn't mean it's not 100%. Parts of it gives us historical references that we can't get any other place. And we can only take the historical and then have to prove it with some other evidence to say, yes, it's right. It's not been twisted. Now, but as far as all their man-made laws on it, throw it right out the window. If it contradicts Torah, throw it out. The mystical side, I don't even touch whatsoever. I look only for historical documents.
You need to get a whole bunch of wicks, untwist them, and put all the truthful ones on one side and all the fake ones on the other side.
That's exactly right.
The Moses and Korah.
So they showed me so much data pertaining to a planet that they wasn't aware of in a time. It was scary. And it mirrors the book of Revelation. And I kept telling them that. And they didn't want to hear that, but I'd tell them anyway. But yeah. So, and then they have a law. Listen to this one. If Elijah and Moses shows up for Passover during this time, and one of the rabbis was to say, well, what do you think of the Talmud? The Talmud says this. And they contradict the Talmud, say you're not supposed to follow that. The Talmud already has a law on that. If the two witnesses come and say that, you walk away from the two witnesses, they're fake.
Well, you know,
That's already pre-programmed in them.
Yeah, Tori had a question. Hold on, Tori.
Mm-hmm.
it says in the end times, we will be doing exactly what we're doing today. We're going to be marrying, eating, having babies. We're going to be living in our homes, doing things, going to work. We're not running off to Israel. We're going to be right where we are.
The masses are going to be doing that.
Not we. You will. Not me. I'm going.
Not me.
Well, we can't afford it, so we're
No,
stuck here.
you're just
Oh, you mean the slaves from Egypt? They couldn't leave Egypt because they couldn't afford it? Where's your faith?
on the planet.
You don't think the Almighty can't perform a miracle?
Oh, I do. Because he says, I will gather my people. I will do this. I will do that.
That's right. And if you die in a meteor shower and you didn't follow his covenant, then you go to him, but how come you didn't lift me up? And he'll say, how come you didn't follow what I told you to do?
I don't believe the way you do, I guess, because
You see, that is a belief.
at all.
I'm telling you facts, but you hold on to a belief. Your belief will get you killed.
I will gather you. I will bring you this place. I will do this for you.
That's right. But he also told you in there that you should be there. This is going to happen during Passover and unleavened bread, and he already told you you would celebrate that in Jerusalem. Now, if you violate his laws and die, that's your own fault.
Well, we also know there's three different groups here, right? There's the bride, there's the bridal party, and there's the invited guests, right? So which parts of those? Not all of those are going to Jerusalem and going to the place.
Only the bride and bridemaid shows up for Jerusalem.
I think
So
the guests of the wedding go through the Great Tribulation.
we're all part of the kingdom, but may have different parts to play. We don't know which part we're going to play.
Right.
Oh, sure.
And I think it's going to be
But
much
only
clearer.
the bride and the bridemaid governs the nations. The guests have to leave the New Jerusalem after 1 year. They put back on earth. Takes them 7 months to bury the dead, 7 years to burn the implements of war. They have to rebuild, and they live back on this tore up earth, living under the law that they had forsaken for the next 1,000 years.
Yes, we give the floor to Livy.
You know, thank you. I just wanted to say that you know, both of y'all are right. Yahweh is going to make sure we are gathered where we need to be gathered. Just like
Now I know.
he had all the people in slavery in Egypt. Okay, he makes arrangements to make us have to, or move us in one gathering location somehow. We don't know how, but also just like at the just like in Acts at Pentecost, when they sold their possessions and stuff and they gave to one another when they had need. I think that is where it's going to come into play for each of us. It's going to be so obvious that we know this world is going away pretty soon. We need to gather our funds. We need to be there for one another. We need to get where we need to go. And it's going to be very clear. I don't think we're going to have to second guess our movements. The way everything falls into place, I think he's going to make it very clear. It was clear during the time of Moses. It's going to be clear for us.
And James and Tori, have your passports ready, even if you don't have the funds.
We do have our passports.
There is many people that are going to be blessed with even billions of dollars that they don't plan on buying luxurious equipment. They plan on helping the people to get there. And you have more than enough money to live there for, throughout the time.
Mario?
Yeah, two things I want to say. First, I want to share a testimony, but first I want to recognize where I got it from. And it's you, Libby, because I started hanging out with you, and I, was asking myself the other day, where am I getting this y'all from?
You're a brother from another mother, brother.
Now it's you, girl. That's where I got this y'all. I even put it in my
We'll have you eating cornbread soon.
even put it in my email. But Tamara and Joshua both are witnesses of this, and I'm only sharing this to hopefully be an encouragement, because Yah is no respecter of persons, and I can assure you that this event this testimony that I'm going to give you did not happen because I did anything right. I believe it happened only because maybe he knew that we'd all be together right now, and I'd be able to share it. What it was Tamara and Joshua and I were at a public swimming pool, and we were just having a good time. I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and if you ever try to talk on a phone while you're at a public swimming pool, it's a real challenge, because you have all the splashing in the water and the kids and the lifeguard shouting, "Walk, don't run."
You have to get out of the pool first, Mario.
And so we're sitting there, and Joshua was at the end of the pool where they had this really cool slide that you go down, and of course you have to go up before you can go down and all that. And anyway, I was in the middle of a phone call when I heard Yah audibly through my ears, louder than the person that was speaking through the phone, tell me, "Get out now. Get out now." And so with those words, I looked at Tamara and I said, "Pack it up. We got to get out now." And she didn't question me, which is unusual, because usually she'd at least say why, or something. But she just said, "Okay," and just started folding up our chairs. I went over to where Joshua was, and I said, "Okay, Joshua, let's go." And then he says, "Well, I just want to go up one more time." And I said, no, let's go. He said, "Well, I'm just going to swim to," and I said, "Get out now," with that kind of a voice. And he looked at me like with shock on his face. And, like Dad doesn't talk like this, right? And so Joshua and I went through the boys' locker room, dressing room. And Tamara went out the girls, and we met in the front, jumped in my car, I started the car. We drove out of that park, and as I drove out of that park, there was a car in front of me blocking, and I'm waiting for this person to move so I could get out. And finally, I just went around that person, and they turned left just as I went forward across the street. We just lived across the street from this public swimming pool at that time. But as soon as I pulled out, a car pulled in behind me. And it was the finishing up of a row of cars that was around the entire park. And the entire park, anyone that was left in that park couldn't get out. if anybody wanted to get in that park, they couldn't get in. And we went home, and that park was in lockdown until 3 a.m. When we left, it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but they were in lockdown until 3 o'clock in the morning.
What
And
was
what
the
had
purpose of the lockdown?
There was a drug deal gone bad, and a police officer got shot. And so they put all these vehicles around this park, and they say that they don't do this, but they lie. And what I mean by that is these vehicles included taxi cabs, they included UPS trucks, they included police vehicles, they included all kinds of vehicles. They say that they don't do that, but they did it. I mean, these were all these unmarked, gas company, I mean, every kind of different, organization. But my point being is that he spoke through all the noise, through the lifeguard, through the water, through the kids, through me talking on the phone, being preoccupied with something else, not expecting to hear from him at all. But he broke through, and we left.
Right.
And he'll do that. He'll do it.
Yes.
He's going to do that.
Mario, I have to share this since you brought that up, because a similar thing happened to me. I'm not going to share all the details, but there's only 2 times I've heard an audible voice, and it was when I needed to be at a certain place at a certain time. And he said, go now. So I knew where he wanted me to go. And I just got off work, had to go and get things ready. And I got my car and I headed in that direction, but I didn't know exactly how to get there. I'd only been there once. And it was in the far deep country, wooded area, lots of turns, curves. You just would not find this place normally. And it was approaching 10 at night. And so on my way, I called my sister because I wanted her to know where I would be in general. I said, Carol, I really don't know exactly how to get there. All I know is that Yahweh, at the time I said God, told me to go, and he told me to go now. And she goes, well, Libby, I have the instructions written down because we went there that one time. And I said, you do? And she said, yes. So I told her, I said, don't try to talk me out of this because I heard him tell me to go. She goes, I'm not, but here's the directions. So I go, and it was perfect timing. And so that episode passed. A week later, I'm at my office desk, and it's at like 11 o'clock before lunchtime. Same voice. Go now. I knew where he wanted me to go. And so I got up, I told everybody, I was very cool. I got up and told everybody I needed to take an early lunch. And I went to that place, and it was perfect timing. And so you're so right. You're so right. I mean, he tells you when he wants you to be someplace.
You're going.
Yeah. And
Yep.
he's going to let us know, and it will be perfect timing.
And he will provide.
Yes.
Yep.
Whether it's directions or whatever.
And we'll know. We'll have that.
I've been pulled out of death many times through God's help, where I shouldn't even be here since I was a little kid.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's going to happen again. One other thing I'd like to share, if I could, for those people that know me, I mean, if you really knew me, you probably, I don't know, you can't really know somebody on the phone, but I'm not a real strong person, especially with authority, like the police and people like that. I have a tendency to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, whatever you say, and all that kind of stuff. And I was in Uganda, East Africa, and I was at the Entebbe airport, we went to go pick up a friend of mine who came in about a month or so after I was there. And there's this little sign about the size of a, you know, those help wanted signs that people stick in their window, you know, that you can buy down at the local, you know, whatever,
Home
just
Depot.
the average. Yeah, like Home Depot, right? And, you know, not a big sign, just about that size sign. It was on the wall, and it was written in it with a magic marker. It said, "Do not cross this point." Okay. Well, I saw my friend on the other side of that sign with his luggage, and I worked my way over there. I grabbed some of his luggage. He grabbed the rest of it. We walked back across, and as I was coming across, this officer came up to me and said, "Did you not see the sign? It says right there, do not cross this sign." You know, and I said, "Get out of my way. I don't have time for you." And I walked on. That's not my personality to speak to someone that's wearing a badge and has a uniform. I'm in a third world country, you know, to say, "Get out of my way. I don't have time for you." And the person, that pastor that I was with, he goes, "Such wisdom you had, Mario." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, if you would have said, 'I'm sorry,' you'd be in prison right now. You would have admitted your guilt and you'd be locked up and we wouldn't be walking out of here."
Wow.
You know? But because you treated it with such authority of your own, here we are walking out of there. So he'll even, I think, you know, get us to act in ways that we might not even normally act.
He will give us the words.
You know that airport you said is in
In
Tibby?
Tebby?
I believe that's the exact. I wonder if that's the same.
Where the Jews were at.
Right, they had a hostage.
1967, yes, 1967 or 68 Olympics or something like that.
And that was where Israel sent in their special team and rescued him.
Yeah.
It was the most successful rescue ever.
Almost like a miracle.
Yeah, that was BB's brother that got killed. He was the only casualty they had.
And this was, when was this?
It was in the 60s.
Yeah, you need to look it up. You were in the middle of history right there. You're standing in it in the middle of history.
Yeah, just do Israeli hostage in Tebby.
No, that was way before my time. I was there in the late 90s.
No, I know that, but the ground, it happened on the same spot.
Oh,
you know?
right.
Probably, if it's the same airport.
Yeah, Entebbe Airport. Yeah, they only have one airport there, so.
That's what I kind of figured, yeah.
Yeah. But
They have 2 ox carts, but only one airport.
So I'm with, you know, James and Tori on the, you know, idea that when the time comes, you know, we'll know.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to have enough money though saved up to take the taxi to the airport.
No, Gill said there's going to be millions. We're going to have lots.
You know what though? Even
I believe it's going to happen.
Money. Even regarding money, this guy that I went to go pick up at the airport, that I told that officer, "Get out of my way, I don't have time for you." After he got there, we started talking, and I said, "How much money do you have?" And he said, $5. This is what he came to Uganda with, $5. And so my first thought in my head was, "Oh man, you came to become a burden to me, because now I have to take care of you," because, you know, I knew how much money I had, and you know, and I knew that when I needed more money, I would just call Tamara and say, "Hey, you know, send some more, you know, money," and which I did while I was. But anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked. I felt like, you know, why would you come here with $5, you know, and become a burden to me? Now I have to worry about what you're going to eat and everything, right? So I take him to this place that I was staying, and I did not stay in like a hotel resort kind of, you know. I went into the village, stayed with people in this little guest house, though they were charging me some money. And when I went to go pay them, because he's really smart, he's like you, Gil, he's like a mathematic guy. He could add stuff up really quick, you know. And I think it was, I don't know how many thousands of shillings equaled like $1. And when I went to go pay for my week's stay, I handed him like a $20 bill, or I don't know what it was. And then Don added it up really fast. He says, "Wait a minute, you've been here for how long, Mario? And you've been paying them that's every week?" He goes, "Right now you owe Mario 2 months stay. He's overpaid you, you know," and because he knew how to add that up. So he took my money. Huh? What was it, Tamara? Yeah, so he saved me money instead of cost me money. So I took the rest of my money out of my pocket, I put it in his hand and said, here, you take care of the money. And it went a lot further because they were ripping me off everywhere I went, you know, because I didn't know how much the
You
dollar
didn't know
was.
the currency exchange.
Right, yeah. So yeah, I even took care of the money part for me. I ended up with more money than I thought I had, you know,
I
so
think
that
that's
was.
perfectly, God can do that. I just don't believe that's what God's calling us to do in this day and time. I think what you're saying is what he's promised Israel them to do. We're not Israelites. And I think this comes about because the Bible says that we are grafted into Abraham's seed of promise. If y'all look at what that promise was, it was the Holy Spirit, not that we were grafted into his line. We were grafted into Christ when he died on the cross.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Well, it says we're grafted into the tree. We're wild branches grafted into the tree. The native branches, which is Israel, with Messiah as the root.
Well,
Yeah, Messiah's the root.
we would have to agree to disagree, because that's not what I read when I read it. So
Yeah, I do.
that's the
You know,
reason
I have read about the
I
you know,
believe I'm
promise,
grafted into
you know,
Israel.
the promise of the Spirit, yeah, and that he had given us the Holy Spirit as a token of a promise. I don't know what the whole entirety of that
The
is.
exact
That'd
words
be
are, you are grafted into Abraham's,
seed.
Not
how
exactly.
to put it, the seed. And
Remember where he says,
and it says basically saying, like Abraham's seed, you're going to get the gift of the promise. The promise that he was given was the Holy Spirit.
well, let me ask you something. So during the Great Tribulation, none of his people should be hurt according to your theology, right?
No, I have no idea who's going to be hurt and who's not.
No. Well, I'm just going to quote you, Hosanna. He says in there that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. He didn't say the enemy was destroyed for lack of knowledge. He says my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
I'm just saying that I don't believe, if you're Israel, you may be going to there, but I'm not Israel. I'm grafted into his promise, not his seed.
Well, I think we're grafted into the same thing that the mixed multitude at Sinai was.
Yeah,
We're grafted into the covenant through Israel.
And
Like,
how
Yeah,
do
They were brought into the nation of Israel just like a homeborn Israelite by following the covenant instructions and doing the same.
Abraham had strangers in his camps, and they became a part of him. They got
Yeah,
circumcised.
that's true.
Well,
yeah,
listen to
and we
this.
are,
and how
and
It's
do
only
we are.
going to be one stick eventually, one stick, one place for all of us to be.
Israel?
We're supposed to come together. He says he has many sheep and many folds. Does he not?
I didn't hear you.
What was that?
What?
That there are many sheep and many folds. He
But
has
one flock under one shepherd.
Israels.
Yeah,
They're
one
not just
flock.
Christians. They're not just whatevers. He has many sheep that he's going to pull from many folds. They're not just going to be Israelites.
That's right. But
We've
there's
been
no
adopted.
way.
We've
There
been
is no
adopted.
way for anyone to know if they are part of Israel. They are lost. The only ones that know, perhaps, are some of the Jews. So
Right,
how would
one-
you know if you are Israel or not?
Unless you
Well,
hear his voice and obey.
yeah, well,
That's the
Ephesians says,
characteristic. My sheep hear my voice.
yeah, Ephesians says that we were once alienated from the covenant of promise, but we are no longer strangers, but fellow citizens of the household of Israel. So his
Israel.
household,
And we
his
will
household.
be one, we will, from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation,
They'll all be
be
called
a
Israel.
kingdom of priests under the Melchizedek order. So we will be a holy nation. So every tribe, meaning the 12 tribes or African tribes or any kind of people, every tongue, people, and nation we will, that are in Yahushua HaMashiach, will be one holy nation.
Yeah.
I think Vivian wanted to say something.
I have also, if whenever y'all have
Okay.
time, I'd like to share a
No?
screen.
Okay.
Let me share something, which I'm going to read some scripture here.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so here. Nope.
You know, while you're looking that up, I was looking up, you know, we were talking about journeys and money. I know this may not apply, but he's talking about, he goes, then Jesus called the 12 to him and began to send them out 2 by 2, giving them authority over unclean spirits. He instructed them to take nothing but a staff for the journey, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, and to wear sandals, but not a second tunic. So, you know, he provides.
And
Yep.
also, as you're talking, Libby, I'm reminded there in Matthew, I think it's 10:6 and 15:24, where the instruction was to go only to the house, the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Right.
And so,
Remember the 40 days in the desert? I mean, the 40 years in the desert, or even it's before the 40 days started. They had people complaining.
Yeah.
Why did we leave Egypt? Because they had a comfortable life.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to leave it.
Yeah.
What happened to those people? Some of them, I think about 10,000 of them got killed right there at Mount Sinai.
They like spicy foods.
Right. So, yeah. Now look at this in Joel 2nd chapter, verse 30 to 32. It says, and I shall give a sign in the heaven, that's space up there, and upon the earth blood, lava, and fire, and columns of smoke. That's earthquake act. I mean, that's volcanoes going off. It says the sun is turned into darkness, which is an eclipse, or when we go into the plasma tail, and the moon into blood. That's a double eclipse. He says the sun is darkened and the moon into blood. You can't have a double eclipse unless you have the third body. Before the coming and great and awesome day of Yahovah. And it shall be that everyone who calls upon my name, Yahovah, shall be delivered. But he qualifies that. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, there shall be a escape, as Yahovah has said. And amongst the survivors, the remnant, the same word that's used, who Yahovah has called. Now, where does remnant mean all, and where does his promise lie? It's in Jerusalem, on Mount Zion. Now, let's look at this. In Malachi 4:5-6, see, I am sending you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming and great awesome day of Yahovah. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers and the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the whole earth with utter destruction. Elijah and Moses show up in Jerusalem. It says that in the, but how are you going to know that they even show up when the radio is down and TV? And why are you violating his own words right here? He says, there will be an escape for a remnant who follow his instructions. And he qualifies the instructions. You will be on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Word Zion means large gathering.
Well,
Yeah, I think
to add to that too, Gil, in Acts 1, verse 4, when he's telling the apostles, do not leave Jerusalem, but wait for the gift the Father promised, which you have heard me discuss. So that's another very specific wait, be at a certain place and wait. And,
you know, I
and
think
so
that
it's interesting. It's just interesting. It's a
Proof of
pattern.
They proved the faith when they waited for Pentecost. It showed you the difference between the Israelites at Mount Sinai, when they didn't have no faith at all, seeing all the miracles, waiting,
Right.
and they couldn't even wait for Moses to come down. These new apostles, they had the faith enough not to see, but to wait for the Spirit.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I think there's two different ways that we can look at the same thing and get and see that it all points to Yahusha, because Yahusha is the spirit of prophecy.
Yeah.
Yahusha referred to this Elijah here that was prophesied here. That I tell you truly that the spirit of Elijah has come. That John the Baptist came in the spirit of Elijah, and that it was Yahusha that was the answer to everything, and he is truly the answer to everything. So, but I think too that it could be looked at from another perspective also. So I see two perspectives, and I'm not saying that there won't be two witnesses, because I wouldn't say that, but Elijah indeed has come in the spirit of John the Baptist, according to Yahusha.
But who followed Elijah? Elisha with a double portion.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and we know
Right.
that prophecies can be fulfilled at different levels at different times.
At layered.
And most times it's at multiple times.
Yeah, they're layered. That's right.
One
Yeah.
of the interesting things is when Elijah and them showed up for Passover, which they've been practicing that for quite a long time. We know that when Yeshua ascended into heaven, that Elijah and Moses were on each side of him. Those two individuals were part of the 50 that came out of the grave.
Yeah.
Right?
And some
they're
people
coming
refer
back.
to,
And why would you want to miss a Passover with Elijah and Moses literally there?
yeah. Some refer to Elijah and Moses, these two witnesses, being spirit and truth.
Spirit and truth.
Right. Truth.
So
See,
this-
Moses, it's going to
Also-
take Moses to convince the Jews that this is the time and that it is Yeshua, and that you're not supposed to follow the Talmud. You're supposed to follow you're not supposed to add or take away from the law. The scriptures. And
man, this has been an awesome
whoever
time.
believes that he is Moses, but to me it would have to be Moses.
Yeah.
So
So he says in Luke 17, when he's talking about the days of Noah, and all of that, he also says to remember Lot, and or to remember Lot's wife. But he talks about Lot, and you know how the two angels came and rescued Lot and took him out. And I've always kind of wondered about that, if it won't be, something like that you'll get a knock on the door and it's time to go. And
Too.
And don't look back.
Yeah, don't look back. Don't go back for your coat or.
well, look at Joel again. Joel says you will see a sign in the heaven. He's already telling you what to look for, when it's going to happen. Then you gather at Mount Zion and such.
Yeah.
If you don't add or take away from this, what he's saying right here, how else can you interpret this?
Yeah.
You'd have to violate it.
I can answer that question because I interpreted it this way for quite a while. Was that and there should be a sign, and the angel said unto the shepherds, "For unto you this day is born in the city of our King," and the sign was the star of Yahusha, and so that was the sign that we were looking for, and then this deliverance that happened in Mount Zion in Jerusalem was Yahusha again, pointing to Yahusha. So, like I said, I think
a star during that period of time was a
layered
object, a wandering, which can be this planet. It can be defined in those terms of that language.
Yeah.
It was there for his sacrifice. It was seen, and it would be re-seen for his return.
Yeah. like I said, I think it's this layered upon layer, you know, the same story upon the same story. We could see all this pretty much in the restoration of what happened in the book of Genesis too. I mean, you know, it's just over and over and over.
It's like
This,
already, but not yet, you know, stuff that's just a repetitive.
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll mute myself.
So Rhonda, did you ask all the questions you wanted?
Yeah, I think so. I just can't wrap my head around how a solar eclipse even happens, though. You know, you read about the, you know, the moon and how it is a reflection of the sun. So if it moves in front of the sun, you know, why does it, you know, I just can't wrap my head around that, I guess.
Gill could explain it. Gill, are you still there? Your image went away.
Yeah, hold on. Let me find a drawing to help
Okay.
her out.
Yeah, I remember.
Visuals are usually the best.
A solar eclipse is whenever the moon gets between the earth and the sun and it causes a shadow to fall on the earth. A lunar eclipse is whenever the earth gets between the sun and the moon and puts a shadow onto the moon.
Right.
I think she needs a visual, is what she's saying. She's telling.
I know I do. I
One
need a
time.
visual.
So that's why. Let's see, eclipse.
Say something else too. Both of those eclipses that you just referred to, Carl, are in reference to light and dark and shadow and stuff, right?
You see,
I've looked at.
This is the moon.
Well,
Yeah.
what I don't understand when you know,
As far as the moon turning to blood or red or anything like that, the only real evidence of that I've seen personally is when Mount St. Helen went off and the moon literally looked like blood, and it was because of volcano. It had nothing to do with anything that happened with the moon or the sun crossing each other or any eclipse or anything. But anytime that you put the smoke over the sun like that, when we were driving back from Oregon, and there was all those fires in California, that sun looked blood red. I mean, because of all the smoke from those fires.
CO2. Yeah, CO2 causes that. But keep
Well,
in mind,
particulates in the air do it too.
keep in mind, this is a 2,000-year-old book. You're not going to see eclipse in the original language. They didn't have it. The way they called the eclipse was blood red. That has been well documented. This is not me making it up. This is well known.
We saw them in 2014 and 15.
that makes sense.
Multiple cultures. Now, keep in mind when I'm going to show you this drawing. This is a solar eclipse when the moon, from the viewpoint of Earth, just in a short little area right here, is dark, that it blocks out the vision of, you can't see the sun. That's called a solar eclipse.
We're not, share your screen, Gill.
Oh, I don't have it shared?
No,
Okay. Okay, whoa. Boy, my computer's acting slower than heck right now.
It's all those things you got all over your desktop.
Well, it's pretty full.
That slows it down a lot.
It's heavy stuff too.
Yeah, exactly. Weighty things.
Weighty stuff.
So Rhonda, did you want to clarify your question again? You started to say something more.
Well, no, you know, if it turns red, now that would make sense to me. But it's when it goes black, you know, like you see these pictures of it, you know, when these eclipses. So
see, whenever there's a solar a solar eclipse, the moon is black.
Black.
You see, but when it's a lunar eclipse, it's red.
The refraction of sunlight coming around the Earth, in the shadow of the Earth that's hitting the moon, it turns a deep red. I mean, we just saw 4 of them in 2014 and 15. They're deep red moons. So I've heard both situations. We know for sure that total lunar eclipses in the shadow of the Earth turn deep red. We also know, and we have a witness from Mario, that volcanic reaction and particulates in the sky also turns the moon and the sun red.
Right, yeah, I lived in Northern California during Mount St. Helena. I saw that.
So it could be either of those situations, I'm assuming.
Yeah, all
Okay,
some of the
I finally got it. It's coming slowly, but it's sharing.
Okay.
Were you, I don't know where you're located, but we had a solar eclipse that came through North America, and where we live, we were in a 99%, and we sat outside, and of course you're not supposed to look at the sun, and we didn't, but it got dark. Our outdoor light came on. It was not totally dark, but it was definitely black.
That's a solar eclipse.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
This is exactly, if you see the picture I have up here, this is a solar eclipse.
That's what just happened in August.
Right.
Right.
Because the viewpoint from Earth, only in an area, small area, you can see the moon is totally black. The rest of the Earth doesn't see it, except for a little shadow right here. But it's only black in a small area of the Earth.
And it's moving across the surface.
Right, because Earth is rotating.
Called the path of totality.
Right. And when you have a blood moon, the moon is on the opposite side of Earth. And that's because the shadow of Earth is covering it. And remember, the orbit of the moon around the Earth is tilted. It's not on the flat plane. So it's only when that tilt comes around, like every 18 years or so, does it come in proper lineup to have a eclipse of the moon.
A total
Right.
lunar eclipse.
And this is also when Passover is on this side of the moon. I mean, Earth. Therefore, you can't, when it talks about a solar eclipse during the time of Passover, it's not physically possible. And you're going to, if you read careful in the text, you will see this multiple times stated, a blood moon with the sun going dark. That's a double eclipse. That's definitely talking about a third object.
And where would that third object be in this picture, Gill?
It'd be crossing right here.
Right
Between
there.
the Earth and the sun.
Right here, at an angle.
Okay.
Okay. And when it gets right here, the tail of the plasma is facing Earth, because the plasma tail points opposite of the sun, but the path of it is heading over here, is going out.
You have a graphic with how you calculated the 3 days of darkness whenever we pass, based on a 7 times diameter object. You have a graphic somewhere in your stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of
let's see if
makes
I
a
can find
picture of it.
So what's the difference like in the eclipse like we had recently and like the eclipse that happened like in Nineveh during Jonah's time? Where it was
That was this object. That was this object coming in.
Yeah, whenever Earth gets even with the plasma tail, it's not a lunar. The moon is not involved with it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the date that there's a rabbi, I think, which one was it? Was it Mark Biltz or whatever?
Biltz. Mark Biltz.
He stated, let's see, what was it? Eclipse. He stated a certain year that Jonah, which is totally different than the Nineveh disk. And he said it was a normal eclipse. No, it's not. Because I don't have it. Because this disc right here, which is found in Nineveh, in the library of 2 kings, one of the kings lived during the time of Jonah. When you interpret this right here, it gives you this view of space right here, the nighttime sky. And it shows, you see right here, if you zoom in, let me see if I can zoom in here.
Yeah, we just, oh yeah, I'm about to say, we just see your desktop.
You see right here? This is the comet-like object. This is as close as you can get to a photograph. This line right here is the ecliptic. That's the planetary plane of Earth. If you draw an imaginary line through the sun, through Earth, that's a planetary plane. That's called the ecliptic. Here's the sun. The largest X right here is the sun. Next largest is the moon. They had Mars, Venus, and Saturn. And they draw a line right through it. Here's our object. This dates to the exact time period of Jonah and Hezekiah, when the Earth tilted 26 to 28 degrees.
Yeah, I
As
read about
documented in the biblical texts.
this is that library that was found in Assyria in the 1800s, late 1800s, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I read about all of that during this eclipse time that we had here. And I thought that was really interesting because Nineveh was right outside of Mosul, and Mosul has been in the news.
But they're not using this disc for the event of Jonah. They're using this, and it's pulled out of the library during the king that lived during Jonah. They say, oh, this is a copy of a later event, which the disc does not say that. And this is depicting the time of Lot, the event, because they're looking for a comet that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. And they pulled this one out of the library, not knowing that this thing passed multiple times. They say, oh, this one made it up. They said, this is a copy of the original that depicts Lot, and that doesn't. This is actual, because the astronomers of the king documented the event that Jonah was warning them about. And it's stored in the library of the king that lived during Jonah's time. This gives us an actual date now. 768, February 17th. Like I told you, it's within a half hour of the actual event.
Wow.
And you know that because of where the location of the constellations are on this disk?
Exactly, and the planets. You see the planets right here match this right here, right?
So the planets give us the day. The planets give us the day, and the location of the constellations give us the hour.
Right, because if a half hour more went, you would not have the two constellation that frames the sky.
They'd be over the horizon or under the horizon.
Correct.
They're only both visible at the same time at the horizon during a 1 hour period.
And this fits the genealogy of the Bible, of the Hebrew texts. Okay, there's 3 different genealogies out there, at least 3. Only the Masoretic text right now, the genealogy worked, and I looked at all 3 of them.
And there was
the Hebrews
also
counted 1 year older than what we count today. They didn't have a year 0. You were 1 year whether or not you were born, or it was 1 year throughout that whole year, that 360-day year. You were 1 throughout that whole year. You weren't a year old after it ended. That's not the way they counted. It was just like the reigning of a king. That was his first year. Well, that's that's how they date a birth. This is your first year in life. Only in modern time, the last 300 years, 400 years, maybe 5 at the most, was a 0 created. It didn't exist throughout time, most of the time after that. So to make the genealogy correct, you have to subtract the year from the ages to do the math to get it correct. And now we have a working timeline that we didn't have before. This is it here. And these events match these artifacts through astronomy, giving us the exact dates. They match. You wouldn't have that match.
And Gill, didn't they also have a 3.5-year drought during that time with Jonah?
We had multiple droughts, correct. That's right. We had 7 years of drought. We can go through, because Hezekiah mentioned they had another 3.5. We had a 7-year drought during the time of David. Saul had 3.5, and David had 3.5. Total of 7. We had a 7-year drought mentioned on Joseph of Egypt. This
Yep.
thing passes mid of the drought. So if this planet is on its way, and if it comes here for 2021, remember, I'm not saying it's going to, I'm saying we're looking, but we should see a 3.5-year global drought begin to start.
In 2018.
Starting this last September to this next September, if we monitor the river levels, and believe you me, they have shown a great drop in them. If we see for this, monitor this next year, this whole year pattern, and see that we're going through a global drought, it's going to affect the food, the amount of food globally.
The
And
Chinese are already projecting severe weather conditions affecting food, exponentially growing 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, peaking out around 2021, 22.
they're already putting in articles how people used to eat horse meat during the Civil War time. That's only this last century that we moved away from, and they're thinking about passing legislation to bring it back. Only reason why they were doing that, there's a shortage. The drought is going to hurt the hay needed to keep cattle farms going, and the grasslands are going to suffer. And they're going to need most of that to try to produce grain instead. They're going to need the grain for probably the humans instead of the animals. So you may see horse meat coming up, which is not kosher, which is going to be sold at the butcher shop coming up.
Yeah, vegetarian's a good way, I think. Forget the meat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
But we should see these biblical conditions again. We should have 3.5 years of global drought phasing to get worse or more severe each year. You know it that you're in a global drought the last year before we go, and that tells you that's mid of that 7 is when it crosses. You have another 3.5 year drought as it's leaving, and that's the way the history showed it. This is
Yeah, I'm kind of the mindset that when I see the abomination of desolation take place, that'll be a really big clue for me. The time to pack it up and go.
abomination of
James,
desolation is toward the end of the Great Tribulation. I hope you're out of there before that.
James and Tori posted, as KMOX reported from St. Louis Monday morning, the bi-state area is nearing drought conditions, and that means the Mississippi River is getting low during the barge industry's most important time of the year. As barges are loaded with the fall harvest, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is working to maintain the required 9-foot depth by 300-foot wide channel they need to operate.
This was in September. Last
Wow.
September.
Right. They're saying shipping charges down the Mississippi River and along the Ohio River are doubling and tripling because they don't have the draft in the water. There's water disappearing out of the Mississippi River between the Ohio River and just south of St. Louis.
Yeah, they think it's sucking into the earth. Some people.
Right. They think it's disappearing. It's also happening along the Ohio River and the source of the Ohio River that I think goes into Maryland. The same thing is showing up, and it's not really a lack of rain because they had rain earlier.
There was a 7-mile stretch where traffic could not pass that was around the Madras area.
Right. There's 120 miles along that area that's low, and like you said, 7 miles that were impassable.
The Euphrates River and the Nile are showing drastic levels. I think it's Yemen that's planning to dam up the Nile and store up large lakes. Egypt already told them, if you do that, we will go to war with you.
Yeah, it can't be Yemen. Can't be Yemen because Yemen is on Saudi Arabia and the Nile is in Africa.
Oh, it's not Yemen. Well, yeah, it's Ethiopia.
Yeah,
It's south,
Ethiopia.
south of Sudan, and that's the source of the water that feeds the Nile.
I lived on the White Nile in
South
in
of
Sudan.
Sudan is Uganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uganda is the source or the what they say the source of the Nile.
The Blue Nile.
Is in
There's
Uganda,
also the White. there's also the White Nile that comes from a different floodplain. They connect in Khartoum, and that's where they produce the Nile that we know that goes through Egypt. So you're right. The Blue Nile ends up in Lake Victoria down in Uganda. The White Nile comes from the east, and they come together in Khartoum, which is about 200 miles south of Cairo. And at that point in Khartoum, that becomes the Nile that we recognize as the Nile that goes through Egypt. It's a single river.
So keep an eye out on the for that's one of our warnings, is a drought phase. If it's going to be 2020 or 2021, but I tell you, the main reason why I'm saying that is because of the story of Joshua, and also this generation, that Holocaust generation,
Are disappearing.
will be approaching their 90s. They'll be in their 90s shortly after that. That breaks the rule that says a generation is 70 and 80. It doesn't say 90. So it greatly concerns me. That's as strong as I can put it. I cannot say it's definite. Greatly concerns simply means it greatly concerns. I can't, but I'm going to be on the lookout. And if you happen to be in Jerusalem, where I'll have a telescope and I'll put your eye on it, and that'll eliminate any doubt. If it's a comet, then it's only going to look bright. But if we see it on its approach, maybe if it's far enough, we might better get to see what the surface looks like. Don't know. We haven't lived through one of these. This is something people in the past have dealt with. Remember, it doesn't always pass close to Earth. Since Yeshua's time, it hasn't passed close to Earth. It passed 5 other times. It passed around the sun, causing drought and possibly meteor showers, but it wasn't, you didn't have a tilt of the Earth because it didn't pass close. It names it as, when you see Israel reborn in 1 year, that generation shall not die out before all is fulfilled. It's coming towards the end of the life of the Holocaust generation. How could they have predicted that 2,000 years ago when it passed? That's the 6th time it passed, and it's all erratic time periods.
Yeah, Joshua, my son just brought up a good point. He said, "Did you know that meteorite is how much, Joshua?" It can be over $1,000 for a gram. Over $1,000 for 1 gram. So there's our money right there.
All right, you catch them, but
put the wash basket out and dodge, right?
And Gil, that's what they worship in Mecca, right? That's a big meteorite stone, right?
Yep, it is. Now,
yep.
I just want to bring out one more line in the Bible. Maybe you might not want to be so stiff-necked. Be careful on how stiff your neck is. You may not make it. You better go with what he's showing you and what he's physically telling you, not what you want it to be. Because it says, he says, I will make an escape for you, for a remnant in Jerusalem. And can't get any plainer than that. And it says it's for the
during the great and mighty day of the Lord.
That's right.
And the other thing too, this in itself is a rehearsal. I mean, it takes us a while to get our head wrapped around a lot of this, it really does.
You have time.
So this is a process. He's got us in this process now because he's mentally preparing us. He's just mentally preparing us, and he's bringing us together, and everybody has insight to this time period, and it's valuable.
Gil, what is the scripture that says, or he's going to take us to Jerusalem? Where is the scripture for that?
It doesn't say he takes you to Jerusalem. It says you meet him in Jerusalem, right here.
Yeah, right there.
This is Joe.
Yeah.
It says, and I shall give a sign in the heaven, and upon the earth blood, fire, and columns of smoke. The sun is turned into darkness, the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahovah. And it shall be that everyone who calls on my name, Yahovah, shall be delivered. But he qualifies it. All right? For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, there shall be an escape, as Yahovah has said. That's a promise, he said. And amongst the survivors, which is same word as remnant, whom Yahovah has called.
Okay, so I see this. I'm going to just share another view on this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm seeing is that this great and terrible day of Yahuwah, or Jehovah, as you say here, to me was the return of the Messiah. He was coming to bring the new covenant, as it says in Jeremiah 31:31. He's coming to bring the new covenant. He's coming to shut down the wickedness, the corrupt Judaistic temple system, and bring in the new covenant. And so this, to me, it happened in between 30 AD and 70 AD. I don't think it's all done exactly, but that here in Joel, what we're reading here, that to me, it happened. Every detail of that took place at the destruction of the temple, and all the Jews that died, and the remnant that was spared because they listened in advance, and like it all happened. Josephus wrote about all of that stuff then. So I think that there's more. There is more. I don't think it's all finished, but I see that as fulfilled.
Have you done a word study on the great and mighty day? I mean, if you do a word study on it, it's all over the place, and it's more than just this scripture. I mean, it's talking about lightning and thunderings and earthquakes and
so that's what happened.
Mountains moving and all sorts of stuff are associated with this day.
So this is what it says. It says to not look forward to it, right? When you look at the millions of people that died at this time. I mean, what Yahusha did from his ministry, his death, he destroyed that temple. He said he was going to. He was destroying. It said the blood of the Jews, they put it on their own heads, and it happened. That happened. Everything changed in the world from that day on, when this temple was destroyed. And there was a 40-year period from the time that Yahusha died to the time that temple was destroyed. There's the sign of Jonah, the 40 years, right there, 40 years from 30 to 70.
But he didn't say 40 years. He said 40 days.
No, he said the sign of Jonah.
40 days. It's not years.
Okay, but it can also be years, right? We see that in scripture, but the Exodus, right? You see it all over. I'm just saying that these things, we had the sun went dark, the moon went to blood when his death, the earth shook, the Mount of Olives, there was a shift in the mount, and the King's Valley there was filled in. I'm just saying, the evidence, Josephus writes, it's there about what happened then, right? So these things
I would suggest for you to study deep. You're going to have to make a decision coming up.
I know.
I've already made mine. Is it because it's quite clear for me? But if it's not, I cannot open eyes. I only deliver the message. It's only the Father can open or close eyes.
Well, the other thing too is a lot of these prophecies, they repeat themselves, just like our feast days. Yahusha fulfilled Passover when he was on this earth, but it's not fully fulfilled. I mean, it's still got meaning. It's still going to cycle through. We're going to go through that cycle. So a lot of things that have happened, just like the first Exodus, is going to be mirrored again.
But I'm just saying this specific thing here, speaking on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. The yellow is what Gill has added to it, but the scripture doesn't say those, right? It says on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. Those things happened. I'm not saying there's not going to be more, but whatever's going to happen from here on in, it's going to be a whole lot bigger than what happened there. It's going to be worldwide, right?
Who?
Here, where it says Mount Zion and Jerusalem, that happened.
So
Yeah.
what did they escape from, and who was the remnant that escaped from the great and awesome day on Mount Zion during Messiah's period on earth? What did they escape, and who were the remnant?
So you know about Titus, you know, and they destroyed Jerusalem, right? They tore the whole thing down. There was millions of people that were killed at that time, and yes, there was some that were saved. But the time periods, the 3.5 years, the 1260 days, all those things, actually, it's recorded, happened. It happened to the date, like the
Well,
everything.
you know,
But it doesn't mean it's not going to happen again.
I agree, but I'm saying that, you know, to look at it, I just want to point that out, that happened. And
you
yes,
know,
probably-
okay, all right, but not to sway anybody in a way. If there's a call that a person has to make, and we're not, you're going to stay on this side waiting for a so-called rapture, which to me is not going to happen until 3.5 years later, or go to Jerusalem. I would, you know, if you're raptured, you can be anywhere in the world, it says.
we can be hearing the Holy Spirit who's going to lead us every step of the way. And we have 3.5 years roughly, or 3 years from here to the time that you think this might all take place. And so we have to be praying a lot that we hear, that we have ears to hear, not what the man, not what even, you know, the things that we see. We have to know his voice. We have to know, if he says stop, we stop. If he says get out, you get out. If he says go to the right, you go to the right. You know,
That's right, Jasmine. And it's going to be very clear. And I'm so glad Mario brought that up, because I'm telling you, I mean, when he spoke to me, it was clear. I had no doubt who it came from. And I didn't misunderstand the message. I knew exactly what to do. And I think we should be able to have blessed assurance that he's going to do the same.
Yeah.
I've
I
heard
find
his voice 3 times in my life. And 2 of those times, he turned a death harm that was coming to me into the person's death.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
One of the times I heard his voice clear as the day was when I prayed in Hebrew and in English,
Right.
asking to define synagogue of Satan, because I thought I knew what it was. I thought it was the Muslims, because synagogue means assembly. Satan simply means adversary in Hebrew. So who are so I prayed, like, who are the adversaries that assemble that is against you and your people? Well, I didn't get his answer that night. I got it the following morning, just as like we're talking right, clear as day. He says, all the ones dressed in black like a uniform.
Yeah.
That took me over a week to figure out how deep that answer was. But he named, at that time, he named the rabbis, he named the Catholic Church, he named the Eastern Orthodox, he named the Coptic Christians, he named the Satanists, he named, it goes on and on and on. All the major religions, he just named them. Then, remember, Torah is both moral and legal. He named the legal system.
Yeah.
You got the judge with his black robe, you got the lawyers in the black suit, and you got the cops, the SWAT team dressed in black.
Well, most certainly, Yah is bigger than all of our heads put together. If we could figure it all out, he wouldn't be that big.
Yeah.
But, and you know, one thing I see clearly, and I think that we all see clearly, that he's done this before, so he can do it again. And one of those things that I think is really awesome about the Passover, you know, later on after the golden calf, they instituted with a priest that a lamb would be presented 2 times a day, you know, during the morning and the evening sacrifice. And isn't it amazing that when someone comes to Messiah for the very first time, they're accepting the blood of the Lamb. So we can, for that person, that's the beginning of their Passover. That's their Passover before they get on the dates, you know, just to come out of Egypt. They take the blood of the Lamb on, they receive it, they, you know, enter into that covenant.
Entering the gate of the Passover, Mario?
Entering the gate of the Passover, and then we start walking on our journey to Mount Sinai and get our instruction. And then we all start to, you know, get this, and we can come in any day, anytime, you know. And before, under the Aaronic priesthood, we had to wait for that priest to go in once a year. But now we can come to our high priest every day, anytime. You know, he's always right there. And so I do see this overlaying of happening again and again and again and again, you know, from the Joseph narrative to the Jonah narrative to the temple in Jerusalem to what's coming up in the, you know, future. And I want to applaud Gill for, you know, sharing, for me anyway, another thing that I can look at, another confirmation that he can speak to us from any angle, whether it's from above or from parallel or from, you know, from, man, just from anywhere. Studying the ants, we can get an idea as to, oh, okay, man, we need to prepare while we can prepare in the summer, so that we can be ready in the winter and all that kind of stuff. I mean, he's just amazing. And I'm sorry, Carl, I see that your hand is up, so I'll be.
A long time.
I'm just being patient, brother. You're good. I just wanted a confirmation, guys. I know it sounds like Gill and I are agreeing a lot, but I can assure you, most of this agreement happened before I met Gill a month ago or came across his information in 2015. I was doing similar astronomical, historical, geological research back in 08, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
I was shown the same place of safety in Jerusalem in 2011 before I ever knew anything about anything that Gill's doing. So just as a second witness, I was shown the same thing, that safety will be found in Jerusalem on Mount Zion, and it has nothing to do with anything Gill has said. So
now
just
I
as
do
a second
believe,
witness, an independent witness.
you know, I do believe that temple there is not the temple, that is the what do you call it, Roman garrison, but about not too far, maybe, you know, just about 60 yards south is the real, you know, where the real temple is. But, you know, you could walk that in like, what, you know, 15 minutes. But the bottom line is that he's looking out for us. He's got it all, you know, he's paved a way if we'll just stay in the way, not in his way, but in the way, you know, in the way of Messiah. Now, I would be really interested, and I'm excited to see too, because I see clearly, and I think everybody else can pretty much see clearly, that once we get back to this 30-day counting thing, we can, like clockwork, work from Pesach and Exodus to Shavuot at Mount Sinai. Same thing in Yahusha's count from when he, you know, was a Passover lamb, and, you know, counting it right up to Pentecost or Shavuot there in the book of Acts. And so I think we're going to be able to count it both ways. So if we're not able to see something, we can see it just because we're counting. And I'd like to see how that lines up to that 30-day start in, you know, from, you know, Exodus. What chapter is that? Let's see. Exodus chapter 12 is when we get the instruction. So yeah, from, you know, Exodus 12, you know, how the calendar lines up from, you know, Passover there straight through to when we go home. Because I think it is a over and over and over, you know, layer upon layer upon layer thing. So.
Well, that calendar was interrupted. That was our conversation earlier. It looks like that 30-day calendar was interrupted.
Right, and Gill
around
said something.
700 BC, and it looks like it will be reestablished. So, I mean, that's what when I get the information from Charlene and Tim, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, the very first 15 minutes of this conversation, man, all the pieces were coming together from everything
Right.
that's been presented today, both Gil's stuff
Right.
and Charlene. It was amazing what was going on in my head because
I
I
saw
was
that.
seeing the combination of both of them are right. They're both
I-
right.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
was
when
right
you
there with you.
apply them, it's not a that one or this one. It's both of them at different times. It was
Right.
amazing. I can't wait to get their information because I'm very familiar, with the current calendar.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah, and you just might be the person to put it all. Gil's done study, Charlene's done study, and maybe you're the one that connects it all together on the chalkboard so we can see it with our eyeballs, because I really am a visual person. And I also, Gil, man, you really put some good visuals together for me to be able to see.
Yeah.
I
And
try to
that's
put all the scripture references, but a person really has to read the entire stories to get the emphasis.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I do think that these narratives are layered. So I think that they point to many different layers that it happened. A lot of people talk about Yahusha's second coming, right? That he's coming again for the second time, and I see like a half a dozen times that he's come. It's like I'm not sure how we got into that idea of just 2 times and that's it.
Correct.
I don't know where that comes from, but he talked face to face with Moses. He spoke with
Abraham.
Abraham, yeah.
Just
And
talk there when he comes, though. We talk about the coming. His coming has a purpose, and that purpose is to bring judgment. And so, yes, he's been here lots of times, but specifically, the day of the Lord or the day of Yahuwah is for judgment. And so, judgment took place, and it's going to take place again.
well, see, and that's another thing that we could go like really sideways, and people could talk about that. Is it the day of Yahusha or the day of Yahuwah? Because Yahusha is to complete Yahuwah's work, but then there's that
the authority was given to Yahusha, right? It says all authority is given to him.
All judgment, and
he came, he's the one who warned, he's the one who said he was going to be judging it, and he's the one who's given he's the one who's the physical entity, is the physical representation of the Father, right? He's the representative.
Remember, Yeshua said it's like a Hebrew wedding as well. He didn't say it was like a Western wedding.
Yeah,
right.
I had a Hebrew wedding. I know, it was really cool, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and the wedding is a glorious time. So there's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be glorious. There's going to be other people. It's not going to be so glorious.
We just keep talking to each other and praying and sharing what we feel we're being shown, and little by little, He's going to knit it together so that we're all going to be okay.
Yeah. Sadly, there's going to be gnashing of teeth also.
For those who missed the mark, yeah.
And it's going to be those that think that they're in and they're out, as Matthew puts it.
I know.
Didn't I do great things in your name, heal the sick and cast out demons? And he's going to say, I never knew you.
Pride. It's pride. That's
right.
Right. Pride.
Right. And I think a good sign of the bride is like when we gathered today, we all had open minds to listen to what each other has to say, and I think that's important. I think that's a strong sign of the bride trying to take in all the information, try to collate it, try to understand it, and because we know we are preparing.
It's a lot. We're learning a flipping lot in the last.
A whole lot.
Gosh, I can't fathom how much I've taken in and trying to put this all together. And how do we know we got it right? Really, seriously.
There's, when he can see his reflection in us, then we got it right.
Yeah.
When he can see his reflection in us, we're like the silver, and he's warming it up, and then he scrapes that that drosh stuff off the top, and then he's going to see his reflection in us, and then we're good to go, man. I don't know when that is, but I hope that I don't get too cool to where that can't be scraped off anymore, because I got a lot of scraping going on.
Well,
Yeah, you're pretty cool already, Mario.
It was my hat. Yeah.
I was telling sorry.
I had somebody telling me about my hat. They go, "I really like your hat," and I said, "Well, thank you very much." And they said, "Not too many people wear those kind of hats," and I'm like, "But it's coming back, But when my dad died, he wore these hats, and I got some hats when he died, and I took his hats. And then recently, the style came back to the Arizona Diamondbacks, it's a baseball team, and they're selling these hats with their logos on them, and so the style's coming back. So if I wear it long enough, I'll be back in style.
Jasmine,
Jasmine,
you were talking about the flow of information and the revelation that's coming in. I mean, I know Libby and I both use the same word. Once we started obeying, our spiritual nourishment was coming in like through a fire hose. It's really funny. What's that scripture about men running, in the last days, men will be running to and fro across. That word to and fro, my understanding is the very word in Hebrew for the internet.
Oh, well, that's cool, because it's certainly happening.
Yeah, and that's where all that information is being spread. That's where it's being distributed, which is yet another sign.
And Christy, I'm so glad you could join us, and I hope you can join on our Bible study on Tuesday night, and also on Shabbats. I don't know if is Christy on your Shabbat list, Mario?
Yeah, I don't think she likes me anymore. Are you still getting the emails, Christy?
I am still getting your emails, and I still love you. We're in the process of moving, so I've been so busy. So now things are settling down. I should be able to join in again.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we are. I am blessed because I've gotten so much from. I wouldn't be getting all this information if it wasn't for y'all, because I'm trying to limit myself as to what I watch and and who I listen to. Because there's so much programming stuff out there, and I've been programmed enough.
Yeah.
So I just want to listen to people that I can trust. Like I had shared with a person that I had met who's new. They're coming in. I sent you a copy of the email, Libby, that I sent to Brian, and said, I don't, trust just anybody to share the truth or to speak into my life, but that I would trust you to do both. And I meant that. Pretty much everybody in this group, I trust to be able to, I could point somebody to you and say, I don't have to worry about that person, because I do worry about people.
Yeah.
I do worry about people.
Right.
And I worry because I have people that were in my life that we came in together, and they denied the Messiah altogether. And they've become Orthodox Jews. And then I've seen some that have gone back to the church and, have said that they've had enough of, of what we're going through now, and the priesthood, and,
Right.
and,
There's a lot of information out there, and they can be thrown in so many different directions so quickly, Mario. You're absolutely correct.
You just get, hooked up with the wrong person, and it's like, wow, bye. But I know it's, Yah that draws us and Yah that keeps us, and I get it, but I also feel like, Joshua's my son, and I take care of my son. And so when he gives me an opportunity to bring that light, I consider myself to be, like a brother, a big brother. Like the scripture says, who is my mother and my brother and my sister, but those that do the will of Yahuwah, right? So I take accountability for my brothers and sisters as much as I can, but try not to go too far overboard and invade their space.
Well, Vivian, it's 1 minute to midnight there.
Yeah,
I
I
see you
was
lit-
just thinking I would say good night.